I think right now the next 2 years are going to be extremely difficult because you have a fascist, white supremacist president with a cabinet built of sexual predators and just some of the worst people on earth. You have a Senate in control of Republicans, a House in control of Republicans, and a Supreme Court that is a right-wing MAGA Supreme Court. And so I don't want to sound doomsday or dystopian. I'm trying to be realist that there really is no meaningful check and balance at this point. And and these next 2 years are going to be a reflection of that. They're going to come for every marginalized minority community. If you're not a straight white wealthy male, you're going to be hit hard. And when I say wealthy, I mean it because some of these tax cuts they'll cut for billionaires, they're going to exploit lower income white people the most. And they don't realize it's coming, but they're going to be exploited the most, especially in rural America. And they're going to blame Democrats. They're going to find a way to blame anybody but themselves. But, the harsh answer to a really important question, Dominique, is that these next 2 years are going to be extremely difficult. And we can talk about solutions. We can talk about what we can do, because I'm solution focused. But part of understanding the solution is diagnosing the reality of where we are. And where we are right now is going to be a very difficult next 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about all communities, and we know, we're a black owned, blackety black station. We know many times we're at the top of the list. I mean, you look at hate crimes, we're the most uh, frequently attacked and have been since they started keeping track. But as a
Yep.
Pakistani American, you must have some concerns too about your own community.
Completely. I mean, look, I'm an immigrant. I'm a faith minority. I'm a racial minority, and I see the attacks and the hate crimes. I'm here in the Chicagoland area, just down the street from me at a Panera. A white woman attacked a pregnant Muslim woman and tried to scald her with her coffee just last week. And granted, she's been finally arrested and charged with 2 hate crimes. But what shocked me was this entire store full of people all standing and watching. No one did anything to intervene. Nothing. And I consider myself extremely fortunate because when my family and I immigrated to the United States in the 1980s, my earliest teachers were black civil rights leaders and activists. And so I was, and I say this word in a very positive way, I was indoctrinated in the language of civil rights at a very young age from the people who marched, from the people who did the work in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so for me, the very onset of my upbringing was, none of us are free until all of us are free. And that's where I think the need for solidarity and unity is going to be so critical at this point because the strategy that fascists use is to divide and conquer. They try to get one community, minority community, to blame another, one to fear another, and to pick us off one by one. And so the need for unity is going to be extraordinarily crucial. And that unity has to go beyond verbal. It has to go into activism. It has to go into investing your finances, your resources, your time, your equity. That's the only real chance we're going to have to survive this.
Well, I feel like the division right now between Black Americans and immigrants is actually the most I've ever seen it. And to some
Yeah.
degree, it's we can blame it on propaganda, but to some degree, it's based on data. I took an Uber a few months ago, and
Sure.
the driver was an Arab American, and he told me he was a Democrat when he came here because Democrats have more liberal policies about immigration. But once he got here, he became a Republican, and he realized that black people are just lazy, and that's the reason why we haven't gotten further in this country. So he actually switched over to Team Trump. And when you see these numbers of Latino and other immigrant groups that or groups with immigrant roots that have switched over to MAGA, and it just as a black American, you kind of go, well, you're not in my camp.
Right. No, and Dominic, I empathize and I acknowledge that pain and that frustration. And as an Asian American immigrant, I'll be the first one to say there is absolutely this cancer of anti-Black racism among Asian communities. We saw that with the repeal of affirmative action. They wrote on the backs of Asian Americans who aligned themselves with white supremacy. And, those Asian Americans who are in that camp are going to find out very quickly that proximity to white supremacy is not protection from white supremacy. And they're going to learn the hard way. I will also say this, and I think this is important because we talk about data, we talk about the narrative out there and the facts at hand. I've been studying the data extremely closely post-election. And, contrary to the narrative that American Muslims jumped ship and overwhelmingly voted for Trump against Harris, there's two facts I want to point out. One, at less than 1% of the population, American Muslims did not swing a single state in favor of Trump, not one. And so anyone claiming that we did, it's simply not true. The data just doesn't back it up. And two, when you talk about how we voted in 2020 versus 2024, there was an extensive exit poll done by the AP and Fox News in partnership. And I'm glad that both work together on this because one is considered to be liberal, one's considered to be conservative. But the polling that they did found that in 2020, American Muslims voted for Biden over Trump at a rate of, I think, 65 to 35. And in 2024, American Muslims voted for Harris over Trump at a rate of 64 to 32. It's even a bigger delta, actually, than in 2020. And, there are absolutely vocal voices within the American Muslim community who protested Biden and Harris because of what is an ongoing genocide. And I can't sit here and lecture them that how dare you protest vote because of an ongoing genocide. I can't tell someone who's lost 30 members of their family that, hey, just vote for the party that still won't call for a ceasefire or an arms embargo, and I promise you it'll get better. I can't do that. But what I can do is recognize that our work and activism to hold those in power accountable is ongoing. It's never perfect. It's never easy. And I can't lose hope. And that's the work that I've continued to do. That's why I was in Georgia and in Michigan in the final weeks of the election, knocking doors and trying to get out the vote. But I can tell you that we saw this loss coming a while ago, and it wasn't due to Gaza. That certainly didn't help. But there are broader issues than the Democratic Party that we need to acknowledge, and we need to reconcile. Otherwise, we're going to lose again in 26 and 28.
Talking with Qasim Rashid. He's a civil rights attorney. You're welcome in, 800-920-1580. We will continue this conversation only on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Hey, Mom, I've been meaning to talk to you about some new COVID information I saw online.
Uh-huh.
I read that 3 out of 4 adults in the United States have a high risk factor for severe COVID-19. And Black folks like us with certain conditions like diabetes, heart disease, mental health conditions, or being 50 and older are at high risk.
Boy, you sound like a commercial.
I'm just saying. I know you love your ginger teas and essential oils, but remember, there are treatment options for COVID-19.
I promise if I get sick again, I'll call my doctor to ask about my options.
An official message from Medicare.
Couple more minutes, and we'll start this month's book club.
You know, I usually love a plot twist, but this year, I'm comparing my options during Medicare open enrollment.
You can't assume your current health or drug plan is the best one for you.
And you gotta make sure your drugs are covered. That's important.
So is saving money.
Review all your options at Medicare.gov. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by Atty.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code SNAP to get an extra 35 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code SNAP for a 35 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code SNAP for a 35 cents per gallon bonus.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
And we're talking with attorney Qasim Rashid. He is an author and a human rights advocate. And, you know, mentioning the genocide going on in Gaza and what seems, I mean, I don't know, they keep saying, well, there are fears of a broader Middle East war. To me, we're not at fears. We're at that already because see what's going on in the West Bank, now Lebanon, you know, Iran is in the picture. And I know this was a factor in the election. It seems like right now what the president-elect is lining up is much scarier even than what we've seen now. I mean, with Mike Huckabee in charge, who once said there's no such thing as a Palestinian. You know, I agree with you. You can't tell people don't protest a genocide, but what we're seeing now, kind of teeing up, seems pretty terrible.
It does, and this is where I put the burden. I wrote a piece for my Substack the day after the election, kind of analyzing, and I said, look, Joe Biden is the culprit to blame here. In my view, and I'll say this again on air, I put it in writing, that he is a single person responsible for why Democrats lost as badly as they did. He set up Kamala Harris for failure. He didn't give her a chance by giving her only 100 days. You told a black woman that overcome racism, overcome misogyny, and meet 300 million people in 100 days. Go. It's not going to happen. You're setting somebody up for failure. She could have ran the most flawless, perfect campaign, and I don't think it would have mattered. Now, we can talk about what I think she made that were mistakes, but the reality is human beings make mistakes, and you shouldn't need to be flawless or perfect to show why you're better than a fascist. And a big part of it was Joe Biden refusing to step back when he promised he would. That's one. Two, this is fundamentally why we have international human rights law and why we have the U.S. Leahy laws, which mandate, not just suggest, but mandate that we restrict arms to nations, even allies, when they are committing human rights violations. We have known from the U.S. State Department reports, two very powerful agencies within the U.S. State Department reported to Antony Blinken almost a year ago that we have undeniable evidence and proof that Israel is committing war crimes by denying aid to Palestinians. And to be clear, that is a war crime. Irrespective of what Hamas did or didn't do, an occupying army has an obligation to provide aid, food, water, and shelter to the civilians of that population. And despite State Department reports confirming undeniably that this was happening and we need to restrict arms to Netanyahu until this gets under control, Blinken and Biden ignored the reports altogether and went to Congress and said, everything's fine, keep doing what you're doing. And that has led to an escalation and a continued escalation that we're seeing right now. I mean, for God's sake, CNN just reported yesterday that after Biden announced a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, that the Israeli military has violated a ceasefire more than 100 times. That's not accidental. That's intentional. And for us to not only continue to arm Netanyahu with more than $15 billion since just the election, but then claim it's a ceasefire, it's textbook propaganda. And my rage at the Democratic Party is If Trump was doing this, we would be marching in the streets and calling him a fascist. But because Biden is doing it, we're like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. That's problematic. We're seeing that escalation happen not by accident, but as the deliberate result of our policies, and we need to acknowledge that and reverse course.
I mean, BBC, I read this morning, and I'm going to quote right here, deadly Israeli airstrikes and a mortar attack by Hezbollah have raised fears that the ceasefire in Lebanon could collapse. How is it a ceasefire if they're firing? Collapse?
Exactly.
Make it make sense.
I mean, it's like, the serial killer we let out is killing people, and we may have to call him a serial killer again. It's like, it's already happening. What are you whitewashing? I mean, another report by Al Jazeera just came out that in northern Gaza, they are deploying quadcopter drones, and these drones are emitting sounds of children crying and women screaming. And so when Palestinians come out of their homes because they think someone's in danger, then the drones are shooting and killing these Palestinians.
Wow.
This is dystopian. This is something you would expect in some kind of Hollywood, dystopian future film, not the reality that we're currently funding right now.
Well, I really feel like this is a point in history where when we look back, people are not going to be able to believe how people stood silent.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, we often ask that question, what would you have done during slavery? What would you have done during the Holocaust or the Japanese internment camps? Whatever you're doing right now is what you would have done in that scenario. If you find yourself apologizing for and making excuses for what's happening right now, that's probably what you would have done back then. And let me be clear, I'm not comparing scars or comparing atrocities. I'm pointing out that in today's time, right now, these are the atrocities that are front and center, the injustices that are front and center, well documented. And unfortunately, we're seeing a level of complicitness from politicians and media. Dominique, I don't know if you read the editorial board piece by the Washington Post slamming the International Criminal Court for pursuing an arrest warrant for Netanyahu.
I didn't read that piece, but I read about it, like a brief about it. So, which is insane to me. We're fine when they go after African leaders, but don't hold Western leaders to account.
Exactly right.
Don't hold white people to account is really how it looks from the outside looking in.
That's exactly how it is. And in fact, I'll go one step further, because I wrote a detailed rebuttal to it. They complain that the ICC is not going after African leaders, and they cite Sudan, ignoring the fact that the ICC has already arrested and charged Sudanese leaders who are committing genocide. And so what they're saying is that the arrests you've made aren't enough. Arrest more people, just don't go after Netanyahu. It's grotesque white supremacy in all its ugliness. And again, we need to acknowledge it and call it out if we have any hope of reversing its harmful impact.
Do you think that, would it be out of the ordinary or beyond the pale for Joe Biden to be, to have a warrant for his arrest, considering that we are the ones funding the majority of that genocide?
The restriction we're going to run into is twofold. One is going to be that the United States is not a member of the International Criminal Court. We never adopted the Rome Statute, and so therefore we don't have jurisdiction. And two, because we are a proxy funder and not the direct involvement in the West Bank or in Gaza, therefore we don't have that jurisdiction either. The ICC is exercising jurisdiction over Netanyahu and Gallant because they are actively, enabling war crimes and genocide in the Palestinian territories, in the West Bank, in Gaza, which is an ICC member state as of 2015. And so to address Biden is going to be difficult simply because, the U.S. has been extremely coy. And despite being one of the lead champions of establishing the ICC, when it came time to put their money where their mouth is and say, okay, and you're also going to be accountable, they said, no, actually, we're going to back down and not be involved anymore.
It's stunning that the Washington Post would make that argument, especially if you go back through the history of the ICC. Almost every single leader that they've called to account has been African. Almost all of them.
Yeah. Well, with the exception of Putin, every single one has been. And you know, I know Karim Khan, and he gave an interview not too long ago where he pointed out that I was told very clearly by high-level diplomats in the U.S. that, just to be clear, you're our bulldog for African leaders. You're not supposed to go after Western leaders. And for, you know, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's insanity.
Yeah, and you know, that's why my immense respect to Karim Khan for knowing that. And I mean, he's being threatened by the U.S. government, by people on both sides of the aisle. They're talking about sanctioning him, sanctioning his family, his wife and children. I mean, it's nonsense. And I commend him for continuing to stand firm for justice despite overwhelming pressure to resign, to step down. They're spying on him. I think people need to understand, you know, this is when folks talk about, you know, are Asians against Africans? Are they against black people? Yeah, I think Karim Khan is a living, breathing example of someone doing it right. You know, he's in an extraordinarily powerful role, and he's a brown face in a high space who's actively working to combat white supremacy. And I think we need to give him credit where due.
We've got a couple minutes here leading into news, traffic, and sports, and we'll continue on the other side. But Attorney Qasim Rashid, you know, you said that there's overwhelming silence around Gaza and what's happening, you know, in the Middle East. But we've seen U.S. students consistently rising up around this. Yeah. And the way that they have been dealt with, to me, feels very undemocratic, very draconian. And I wonder if it will successfully bring a chill to not just students, but also professors in speaking out on these issues.
Well, we're already seeing a chilling effect. There's no doubt about it. We're seeing numerous cases of professors being denied tenure, even Jewish professors, scholars of Israel, Israeli Jewish professors being denied tenure because they dared criticize the Israeli government and being called anti-Semitic. We're seeing this happen with the targeting of Jewish students by right-wing provocateurs, of Arab and Muslim students, you know, by right-wing provocateurs. And this impacts black and brown people as well. Remember, the single largest demographic of American Muslims are black Muslims. And so black Muslims are getting the double whammy of being black and of being Muslim. And we need to acknowledge that. That said, Dominique, I also have immense hope in young people because this is not the first time young people have led the charge to demand justice in the face of apartheid and white supremacy. Young college students protested courageously and successfully for the U.S. to divest from apartheid South Africa. Young people protested the Vietnam War successfully. Young people led the civil rights movement, right? I mean, Dr. King was 26 years old when he led the Montgomery bus boycott. So, you know, to me, if history is any indicator, the young people will win. They're smarter. They're more, focused on justice. They don't have time for the trash and the nonsense. And they have more energy. And frankly, they're going to live longer. And so they're going to inherit it. And I always look at the young people as a moral compass. And I'm excited to see the impact they've already had. And I'm hopeful that motivation and momentum continues in the coming years.
Qasim Rashid is my guest, news, traffic, and sports right now.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should know from BIN News. The search continues for 5 people who were aboard a fishing vessel that capsized this weekend near an island in Alaska. The 50-foot fishing boat capsized around midnight Saturday night in the southeastern part of the state. The area is under a winter storm warning, complicating search efforts. Spring Hill, co-founded by LeBron James, lost nearly $30 million last year and has never been profitable. The company plans to merge with Fullwell 73, aiming for profitability by the end of next year. A new study by Emory's sports cardiology program found black athletes are 5 times more likely to die of sudden cardiac arrest than white athletes. Published in The Lancet, the study suggests genetics may not explain this disparity and calls for more research. And Moana 2 is the new holder of the Thanksgiving box office record. The animated sequel made $221 million over the 5-day holiday period. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
It's Mattress Firm's Black Friday sale. Get matched with your perfect bed and save up to $700 on a wide selection of quality mattresses. Plus, score a free adjustable base with a qualifying purchase. See store for details.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. 21 games into the NBA season, is it possible that Father Time is tapping LeBron James on his shoulder? Over the past 4 games, LeBron looks like a player approaching his 40th birthday. LeBron, who turns 40 on December 30th, made only 4 of 16 shots Monday night in the Lakers' 29-point blowout loss at Minnesota. It's the 6th straight game LeBron has shot below 45%. He finished with a season-low 10 points. This is LeBron's worst shooting stretch since 2004. He also has missed 19 straight three-pointers. LeBron has played in all 21 games this season. He looks like he could use a night off. The Lakers, 2-5 in their last 7 games, are in Miami on Wednesday. It's doubtful LeBron will sit out that game, but sometime soon, Lakers coach J.J. Redick needs to give LeBron a game to regroup. Father Time seems to be showing up at Lakers games a little more than usual this season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
This season, Chevy brings classic pairings, cookies and milk, mistletoe and kisses, and your holiday plans and a new Chevy. Silverado 1500 gives you power and capability with 430 pound-feet of torque to haul your holiday tree. The Equinox EV and all-new Equinox, America's best compact SUV for new vehicle quality by J.D. Power, offer both confidence and style to see you through the holiday season. It's easy to see why Chevy makes everything better and brighter. Find your red tag. Get 0% APR financing for 36 months on select popular Chevy models when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Award based on 2024 models. For J.D. Power 2024 U.S. Initial Quality Study award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. Offer available on all 2025 Equinox and 2024 Equinox EV, Blazer EV, and Silverado EV models. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment is 26.8%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 1/2/25.
Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Badass Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and Malik Books. Your business deserves to be heard. Let KBLA Talk 1580 amplify your voice and connect you with our powerful community of listeners. Email smb@kbla1580.com today. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your flag. Happy Kwanzaa from unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, lenders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio, KBLA Talk 1580.
And we're talking with civil rights attorney Qasim Rashid. So much to cover, so little time. Well, for one thing, tell us how to find your Substack. We want to keep up with these fascinating articles. It sounds like you are busily writing.
I appreciate that. It's just, you can just go to my name, QasimRashid.com, QasimRashid.com. And my name is my social media handle across all platforms, Blue Sky, obviously Substack, Threads, you name it, Instagram. And so I'm pretty easy to find. Just go to the website and you can subscribe there.
Okay, QasimRashid.com or on all the social media platforms. You haven't left Twitter yet, huh? I haven't either.
No, not yet. Not yet. I'm gonna stick it out. You know, I feel like I've been on that community for, I think since 2010 now. So coming up on 15 years pretty soon. And, you know, I love my followers on Twitter. I've got a lot of thoughtful folks around the country who reach out to me regularly for questions on the issues that I write about. And, you know, while I get that Musk is apartheid-clad for a reason, I also see value in continuing to engage with the folks who have come to rely on me there for information. Yeah,
I mean, I feel like I stay there partly as a spy. Like, I gotta know what all the crazy stuff they're saying over there. I've noticed my followers dropping off since after the election. As a lot of my folks leave Twitter and go over to Blue Sky. I did start a Blue Sky account, but I think I have like 10 followers or something over there.
You know, what you got to do on Blue Sky, the key to growing on Blue Sky is because I've just got on Blue Sky recently, and I'm approaching 100,000 on there.
Wow.
The key, though, the trick that I'm learning is you got to get involved with the starter packs. And it's a new concept that no other social media platform has done, which it's a brilliant concept. It basically, you know, when you join a platform, you're like, you know, let's take Twitter, like, where's my black Twitter followers at, right?
Right.
What they've done on Blue Sky is they're like, you join and you can click on one link and it'll give you all the black Twitter followers that you want to follow. And with one click, you can follow all of them.
Wow.
And so if you get added to one of those, then your growing increases pretty rapidly. And it's people who care about that stuff, you know, whether it's Slack Twitter or racial justice or women's rights or economic justice. It's people who care about that as your engagement stays high. And so I'm enjoying my time on Blue Sky for sure.
Wow. Okay. I'll have to check that out. So we said we were going to talk about solutions. And I had a guy last hour complaining that he's tired of hearing me complaining and whining about Trump and our new district attorney, Nathan Hochman. And all I do is when. I'm just as bad as Trump. Yeah. And so, I mean, on the one hand, I feel like we do have to track what they're doing. These would-be appointees and scary maneuvers that they're doing. On the other hand, I do want to focus on solutions, and I do want to focus on the activism, the hope, and what's working. So I'm not sure where that balance is, still figuring it out. But you said that it sounds like you've been finding ways to focus on solutions.
Definitely. And, Dominique, anyone who comes to you and says you're whining, my response to those folks has always been, hey, why don't you lead by example? Show me how it's done. Why don't you get out there, show me how it's done, and then I can follow your lead. But until you're willing to do that, then maybe either support or get out of the way. I don't have time for people who would rather complain about people doing the work rather than doing the work themselves. And so, you're one of the people doing the work. And so anyone telling you that you're whining is projecting their own insecurities. That's the way I look at it, and nothing else. Let me get that rant off my chest. But, the solutions to me, look, I think the number one solution that we have to talk about is financial investment. Look, there's no magical way we're going to undo the harms done unless we're investing our resources. And this is why I say to folks that if you find a candidate or an elected that you believe in, donate to them. Be involved with them. Send your hard-earned resources. And if you can't send your hard-earned resources because things are tight, send your time, phone bank for them, door knock for them. A lot of folks think that elections are won or lost on election day. No, that's not true. Elections are decided on election day, but they are won or lost in the months and years leading up to that election day. And it's just like, I'm a big sports guy. I run marathons. I'm lately getting addicted to pickleball. And, any athlete will tell you that, the right to take that last second shot in the NBA Finals is not something that happens on that day. It's the work you put in to prepare for that last second shot. And so the solutions to me are very simple. The first thing you got to do is activate yourself. And that means getting involved in your local politics, attending your town halls, your city council meetings, your school board meetings. 2, organize the folks around you. Find 2, 3, 4 people. You don't need to take over the world, but just find 2 or 3 or 4 people in your sphere of influence and say, hey, this is what we're doing. You're going with me. I'm going to drag you kicking and screaming. And then I'm serious. It makes a difference because they trust you more than they're going to trust some talking head on television. And then 3, once you organize them, then you mobilize them. Then you bring them with you to go and outdoors. You bring them with you to phone bank. You bring them with you. And God forbid, one of you decides to run for office yourself. This is how we're going to bring about meaningful change and solutions. It's not through somebody, coming down from heaven and saving us. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. But what is going to happen is us being our own saviors in the space. And that's all within our tangible efforts over these next coming months and years.
Okay, so I agree with that. I always say, join an organization if you can, or start one, or do a thing, do something. But I also feel like there's a lot of cynicism around politicians right now. People are, losing their minds about the Biden pardon, which I think is dumb, but okay. I think here in California, there's a lot of cynicism because the California Congressional Legislative Black Caucus betrayed us on the reparations bills and did not bring them up for a vote. We have, this. I think because the 45th president is constantly lying so much, and then it makes this idea that all politicians lie seem even more true. And even Biden saying that he wasn't going to pardon, Hunter, and then he does. To me, pardon the guy. Just put a lot more people on that list.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. But who cares? He's your son. Who wouldn't pardon their son? Like, why are we even talking about this? We're talking about it because he lied, and I think there's a real cynicism right now that makes people less likely to coalesce behind a progressive candidate or cause.
I agree. I mean, Dominique, that's extremely well said. And I said earlier in this interview that I've been indoctrinated with the wisdom of the civil rights activists of the 20th century who built this country and built the rights that many of us enjoy. And there's one thing I tell my fellow South Asian immigrants, that if you immigrated, you have one group of people to thank, and that's Black people. Because if it was not for Black civil rights leaders in the 1950s and 60s demanding reform to our immigration system, then the 1924 Thind versus United States decision that banned all Asian immigration would still be on the books. But Black civil rights leaders said none of us are free until all of us are free, and part of the civil rights bills was the 1965 Immigration and Naturalization Act. And I think about the wisdom of James Baldwin when he says, these two quotes on hope that I always think about. One of them is something that I remind myself of whenever I get frustrated, where he says that the hope of the world lies in what one demands, not of others, but of oneself. And to me, the beauty of that is that no matter how bad things get externally, no matter how cynical you want to be about politicians and they're lying and they're cheating and they're scandalous, you still have full control over yourself. You still have full ability to say, I'm not going to let that negativity bring me down. I'm going to maintain my hope. And then the second quote on hope that he has that I think about, and especially because I've got, three amazing, young children, where he's asked by some journalist that, how do you overcome the despair? Mm-hmm. And he says this beautiful way. His initial reaction is, I've never been in despair about the world. I've been enraged by it, but I don't think I'm in despair. I can't afford despair. I can't tell my nephew, my niece, you can't tell the children there's no hope. And so, I look at my kids, I look at the kids of my siblings, of my neighbors, and I see that they deserve hope. They deserve us to look past the cynicism and build something for them, because ultimately they're going to inherit this in the very near future. And I know this sounds very esoteric, and it doesn't really land when you're struggling to make ends meet. I get that. I empathize with that. I would just ask you to remember that, it's not all on your shoulders. The whole world is not on your shoulders. You are, and there are people you can connect with. That's where, when I talk about mobilizing and bringing 2 or 3 of your friends with you and dragging them with you, kicking and screaming, that's synergy, Dominique. It goes a long way. It's beautiful, it's powerful, and it's effective.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's also contagious. We'll continue our conversation with Attorney Qasim Rashid when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Tips to help improve basic steps for building a budget in 2024. Building a budget can help you achieve and reach your financial goals. With a budget, you can keep track of your spending, avoid and get out of debt, limit overspending, pay bills on time, and build solid savings habits. What's the best way to get started? Figure out how much to set aside for expenses, like rent, mortgage, bills, groceries, and entertainment. Understanding your past financial habits can help you make the proper adjustments for your budget. Adjusting to a budget can take time as you work to find the right balance, but keep working on it. For more financial health tips, visit chase.com or stop by a local branch. This segment is sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
Talking with attorney Qasim Rashid, a civil rights attorney, and maybe a lot to ask right in the last part of the hour, but I know that the Supreme Court is up to their back in action, I should say, up to their dirty work. And there was a lot of conversation before this election cycle about reining them in some kind of way, right? Because of the blatant and excessive corruption of Justice Roberts and Clarence Thomas. But I haven't heard anything about it lately. And maybe, as you say, the Republicans, I call them the new Confederate Republicans, they now have the Senate, the House, the Supreme Court, and the executive branch. So maybe it doesn't make any sense because it's not going anywhere. But I feel like we should at least be still having this conversation because we currently have this super activist, conservative extreme court.
Yeah, you're so right, Dominique. And I think this is where the frustration rests, and this is why I think Kamala Harris got 10 million fewer votes than Joe Biden. If you look at the data, it's a lot of young people that just didn't come out. Young people who drove Joe Biden to victory back in 2020. They came out in massive numbers. This time, there's a 30-point shift rightward, or they just stayed home. So Trump didn't get more votes. It's not like, millions of people decided, oh, the fascist actually is the guy we want. He got the same number of votes he got in 2020. But the fact is that young people stayed home. And one of the big reasons why they stayed home is, and I think this is, going back to that's the mistake that Kamala Harris made, is when she was asked what she would do different than Joe Biden, she said fundamentally nothing. And I think that's where the big mistake was, because if we wanted to vote for an old white guy who's out of touch, we would have voted for an old white guy who's out of touch. We wanted a young, dynamic black woman who had the record in the Senate of being the most progressive senator in the country. That's what we wanted. And when she, I guess her advisors or whatnot said, I'm not going to do that, I think it turned off a lot of young people especially. And one of the big things, to finally get to a really important question, that we had voted for Biden on was Supreme Court reform. Yeah. In the first 2 years, Biden had the House, he had the Senate. He could have abolished filibuster, expanded the court, and had 13 justices, which would have been aligned with precedent. We have 13 federal districts. He didn't do that. He could have enacted legislation for there to be term limits in Supreme Court members. He didn't do that. He could have enforced an ethics requirement. He didn't do that. He didn't do anything. He just put out a statement of how it's important and how we should really think about it. And then, he's still functioning as if we're living in the 1980s and 1990s and there's some kind of institutional reform here. There's none. We're dealing with an opposition party that's a fascist party. And one of the best analogies I heard is Democrats versus Republicans playing chess is Republicans are a pigeon that craps all over the board and kicks pieces around, and Democrats are pointing to the rule book that pigeons aren't allowed to play. It's like they're already ruining the board. What are you talking about? Yeah. You got to get with the program here. And so you're right. We had the opportunity in those first 2 years. Biden could have used his bully pulpit to bring about those reforms. He didn't. And now we see where we are. And I'll just make this one final point. We have to remember that the filibuster should always be referred to by its proper name as a Jim Crow filibuster. Dr. King talked about this extensively. It is a Jim Crow era policy. It is not in the Constitution. It is not any piece of legislation. It is not in the Bill of Rights. It's nowhere except an arbitrary Senate rule designed to slow down civil rights progress. It exists for one reason, and that is to protect and advance white supremacy. And the fact that Joe Biden refused to touch it is to me, that's his legacy in the space. And it's a shame that even now he won't admit to it.
It's the description that you just gave of the filibuster reminds me a lot of what Dr. Gerald Horne gave when I asked him about it. But I always hear Democrats saying, well, that's a slippery slope because if we abolish the filibuster, then, when we're in the minority, we won't have that tool.
Yeah, I think that's what always makes me laugh about Democrats is they will fear something that doesn't exist while ignoring the threat that is staring them in the face right now. And that's how we got to this point where we are, where we have, minority rule across the board, where we have our voting rights are being gutted and stripped away Citizens United has allowed a person like Elon Musk to literally buy the election. LGBTQ rights are on the chopping block. Abortion rights are gone. Immigration rights are on the chopping block. Affirmative action has been repealed. What do they expect is going to happen to us that hasn't already happened to us, right? Everything they said, well, when we're in the minority, they'll attack us. They're already attacking us for crying out loud. We have an opportunity, or had an opportunity, to actually protect our civil rights. Imagine for a moment if, rather than capitulate to this, in my view, nonsensical and weak and frail argument, imagine if we had said, you know what, the hell with the filibuster, we're going to abolish it, and we are going to add 4 more members of the Supreme Court who are actually qualified, people like Ketanji Brown Jackson. Imagine if we had said, the hell with the filibuster, we are going to restore the Voting Rights Act, pass H.R. 1, pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and ensure that the 100,000 polling locations that Republicans have shut down since stripping voting rights in Shelby versus Holder, that those voting locations are restored and people have access to voting once more, right? I mean, imagine if we had codified Roe. Imagine if we had passed meaningful immigration reform. These are all things that we could have done. If we had passed, for example, the Build Back Better Act, gone because it's arbitrary rules.
I wonder though, because you did have Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, so even though we had the majority, it seemed like it's hard to get anything done. But your point is taken. I mean, I feel like it's even happening now where people are going, oh no, Biden has emboldened Trump by pardoning Hunter.
Thank you.
What are you talking about? The guy already pardoned Michael Flynn and Roger Stone and Paul Manafort and Charles Kushner and Steve Bannon. He was already emboldened. What are you clutching your pearls for? It doesn't. I just wish he would add, Leonard Peltier and Marilyn Mosby and some other folks to that list.
Well, that was the point that I made. I mean, Trump also pardoned Eddie Gallagher and about a dozen or so more war criminals who murdered children in cold blood, and Trump pardoned them. And no outrage about that, but because he pardoned. Look, I think there's legitimate criticisms of Joe Biden pardoning Hunter, and we can talk about those. But one of them is not that now Trump is emboldened. That's fatally disingenuous. And you're right, Leonard Peltier, the 40 people on death row, on federal death row, the 3,000 people in prison for marijuana possession, nonviolent criminals in prison for marijuana possession, pardon them, for God's sake. And the fact that Joe Biden has only used his awesome power over the presidency to help his son and nobody else, I think it's frankly disgraceful. Civil rights organizations, criminal justice organizations have been railing against Biden the last 4 years because he is way behind every previous president, even behind Trump, in the number of people that he has commuted their sentences or pardoned. It's a disgrace to me. And you talk about one of the legitimate criticisms. I think it's completely okay to criticize Joe Biden for pardoning his son from a drug offense when he was one of the architects of the crime bill that decimated Black and brown communities on drug offenses. That, to me, the hypocrisy is astounding, and Biden should be ashamed of himself. And any Democrat who upholds justice above partisan politics should be calling out Joe Biden that how dare you destroy generations of people with this crime bill, but then the moment your son has to be exposed to even a fraction of it, suddenly you bring in the awesome power of the presidency? That's shameful. That's disgusting to me.
Well, there are a lot more questions I could ask you, but we are out of time. The hour flew by. Attorney Qasim Rashid, thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Hope you'll come again. We've got news, traffic, sports, and then these phones are wide open. It's going to be a freestyle hour next hour, and you're welcome in KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Capsized around midnight Saturday night in the southeastern part of the state. The area is under a winter storm warning, complicating search efforts. Spring Hill, co-founded by LeBron James, lost nearly $30 million last year and has never been profitable.